Today we're checking out the K65 Pro Mini, a 65% layout 8K polling gaming keyboard, and this is the Nightsabre, a wireless FPS focused gaming mouse, both from Corsair. Can this pairing make me a BattleBit beast? Hi guys, I'm Matt, welcome to Kit Guru and to my 2-for-1 review of the K65 Pro Mini and the Nightsabre, two new peripherals that are releasing from Corsair. So the K65 Pro Mini retails for 130 quid. It's got up to 8K polling, that's pretty insane, 8K polling. It's got Corsair OPX optical switches. And then we have the Nightsabre. This retails for 150 quid. It's got a Corsair Marksman sensor which can handle up to 2K polling and up to 26K DPI. Let's dive in and check both of these out in a bit more detail and find out if they're any good. So let's kick things off with the design of the K65 Pro Mini. Obviously it's a 65% keyboard, but it does retain the arrow and the delete keys. And that delete key, I really appreciate that. I use it quite a lot on keyboards, and when I don't have it, I do miss it, or especially when I have to reach for the function key to be able to press that delete key. I like having a dedicated delete key, and the arrow keys are a nice touch as well. It's a full black design, as you can see, and it's not available in any other colours as far as I'm aware. It's got a brushed aluminium top case, and then in contrast to that, a plastic bottom case. It does have full RGB, as is the usual with Corsair, and there are plenty of different lighting options, and you can customise to your heart's content in their iCUE software, which we'll touch on later in the video. There is a bit of a dim spot that I had to point out on this model that I've got on the Corsair key that's located in the top right corner, kind of above where the arrow and the delete keys are. That's the only place on this whole keyboard where I've spot something that wasn't quite right with the RGB. It's a bit dim, but it is the key that has the most kind of etched out legend for lighting. And talking of those legends and the keys, the keycaps are double shot PBT and the legends are nice and bold. I like when it looks nice when you have a bit of a weird font on keycaps, but it's not very practical. You can see and read these keycaps really clear and really easily. It does have adjustable feet on the bottom, so you can change the incline, but there is only one level of incline available. There's no two different options for adjusting that incline typing level, so you've just got one or the other, and they're pretty standard feet, to be fair. They fold out and fold flat. There's nothing really more to tell you about them. There are rubber grips on the bottom as well, but the board doesn't stay in place very well, and it's probably due to its lightweight. With this thing tipping the scales, the specs say 0.6 kilogram, and I put them on my scales and they're 605 gram. So Corsair were pretty much on the money with that measurement. Now moving on to look at the design of the Nightsabre wireless mouse. It is designed primarily for FPS gamers. It's got a symmetrical shape and it suits my palm grip quite well. It's got a quite flat feel when you put your hand on it. It's hard to describe without you feeling it, but when you put your hand on it, it feels like quite a slim, not a bulbous mouse like some of the mice that I've reviewed and used in the past. It suits my palm grip quite well, as I said, but if you're a claw gripper, you may want something a bit fatter. It's got the same all black design as the K65 Pro Mini with a bit of carbon fibre styling that looks really nice. I really like it. That sits just around the mouse wheel and next to the buttons that you can use for switching profiles, which I'll talk about more in a moment. It has full RGB with 7 different lighting zones, which can be linked to other Corsair products through the use of lighting link layers in iCUE, which again, we'll touch on that software a little bit later in the video. It's got sharp angular lighting zones at the top and the front. But the front ones, you can't really see them when they're on a desk. If obviously you use a mouse, the front is facing away from you. You can't see those front zones. So I kind of don't really get the point of them too much. Like it's draining battery and the zones are at the front. Just you may as well turn them off in iCUE. You can activate different zones individually. So if I were you, I'd turn them off and save a bit of battery. And then, as is the usual, it's got the Corsair logo on the arse end of the mouse, like pretty much every other mouse that we've ever seen from Corsair. And coming back to those buttons, there are 11 programmable buttons, including scroll wheel tilt, so you can move the scroll wheel left and right and assign that to whatever you want to in the software. There's very small, the profile shift buttons that I mentioned, very small profile shift buttons just behind the mouse wheel, which are quite hard to reach accurately. You can reach them, but getting to the left and right one can be a bit of a pain. And then finally, you've got DPI switch buttons just to the left and front section of that left click. It's got 100% PTFE feet, which do cover quite a large surface area of the bottom of the mouse. And it does glide okay, but it's slightly held back by the weight, which this thing comes in at 99 grams, which is a slight bit heavy for an FPS mouse, especially one that's marketed as an FPS mouse. The DefAdder V3 Pro, for example, is roughly 63 grams. And then the Modelo Pro Wireless, two mice that I've reviewed before, is roughly 55 grams. So compared to that Modelo Pro Wireless, this is almost twice as heavy. It doesn't feel massively heavy when you're using it, and it glides okay. It's just not, I wouldn't call it a lightweight mouse by any stretch of the imagination. Moving on to talk about build quality then, and we'll start with the keyboard. It feels quite solid, it feels quite good. The keycaps are good quality, and as I mentioned before, they're double shot PBT. I would have liked to have seen a full aluminium case rather than just the top, but for the price of 130 quid, then I can kind of look past it because it's not the most expensive keyboard in the world. Don't get me wrong, it's not the cheapest, but we have got brushed aluminium on the top and then plastic on the bottom, which kind of keeps the weight down. The feet are okay, they're nothing special, as I spoke about them before. They flip up, flip down, they're quite snappy and plasticky. They don't feel the best, they're okay and they get the job done. The cable that's included, as this keyboard is wired only, is braided, it's 1.8 meters long. It's a good quality cable, as we've come to expect from brands like Corsair and other big manufacturers. The ports feel okay. That USB-C port on the top left edge of the K65 Pro feels good, it's recessed, but that cable does wobble a tiny bit when it's plugged in. And doing the bend test on this thing, there's minimal flex due to its size. It's always the case with smaller layout keyboards. It doesn't bend too much at all, but that's not something you're going to do in day-to-day. Don't go trying to bend your keyboards. Moving on to the mouse then, and again, it's a solid feeling construction overall. I like the feel of this mouse, to be honest, build quality-wise. It feels quite good. The buttons all feel really good, including the side buttons and those profile switching buttons. They're all nice and tactile, and they're all quite clicky. It's the same good quality 1.8 meter cable as the keyboard. I can't tell any difference at all. The feet feel great to the touch, and they cover a decent amount of the bottom of the mouse, like I said before. It's just the weight that holds it back on the glide test a little bit. There is a slight bit of flex when you squeeze this mouse, but again, like I said about the keyboard, you're not going to pick up the mouse and start trying to squeeze it to within an inch of its life. So in everyday use, just don't do it, because if you do it and break it, you'll regret it. But I had to do it for the review, and it does flex just a little bit. So here's some sound tests of both the keyboard and the mouse, both in their stock configuration. So those sound tests, the keyboard, I'll start with the keyboard. It sounds okay, But that spacebar does leave quite a bit to be desired. It probably could do with some extra lube, but there's still quite a bit of stab rattle, as was the case with the last Corsair keyboard that I checked out. But that's a contrast to the mouse, which I really liked the sound test of the mouse and like how this mouse sounds when you use it. It's very clicky. It's very tactile. The buttons, you know you've pressed them. You've got the Corsair quick strike switches, which there's no pre-travel or anything before pressing the button and the switch actually actuating. I like how this mouse feels. It's great. So talking more about the capabilities and the specs of the mouse then, it's got a Corsair Marksman sensor, which is capable of up to 26,000 DPI, 650 IPS tracking speed, and 50 Gs of acceleration. I mentioned quickly at the start of the video, this thing can handle up to 2000 Hertz polling rate. And just to touch on my usage and stuff with it, I've really enjoyed using it for gaming. I've been playing a lot of BattleBit, as I alluded to at the start of the video, and the mouse has performed well. It's never disconnected and I've never had any issues, and I haven't felt like I'm any worse at the game when using this mouse as opposed to my regular day in, day out mouse, which is the DeathAdder V3 Pro. It's slightly heavier than my personal preference for FPS games, but that's just a me thing, and you may prefer a mouse with a bit of heft to it. I saw in my recent review of the Mountain Macaloo Max, a few people saying they preferred heavier mice, so this is a wireless option that could be good. And talking about the battery life and connectivity for the Nightsabre mouse then, it connects via wireless using a 2.4 GHz USB dongle. It does have Bluetooth connectivity that I'd never use for gaming because the latency on Windows is awful with Bluetooth stuff. And then you can use it while it's plugged in charging, so you've got the wired option as well. The 2.4 GHz, I've never had any issue with it. I'd move the mouse, it wakes up from sleep within about a second or two, and then you're good to go. The advertised battery life for this mouse is up to 100 hours. Now, my use has been with 2K polling and 100% RGB, on the brightness on 100%. And that's brought that battery life down to about 50-ish hours. I wish companies would start putting these figures on their marketing material, as that's how most gamers are going to use it. Most people that pick it up, they're not going to pick up a 2K polling mouse and then use it at, say, 500 Hertz polling to get the battery life. They would just go and buy a mouse that can only do 500 Hertz polling. So if you're going to advertise 2000 Hertz polling, please start advertising the battery specs if you use it to its full potential as well. And then the connectivity of the keyboard, there's not much to talk about here. This is a wired only keyboard, but it is capable of up to 8000 Hertz polling. So it's very responsive. You tap the key, the input is registered. There's no delay. There's nothing like that. It's a great keyboard for FPS gaming as well, which any game that sort of requires fast inputs. It feels very nice to game, and I've been using these two in tandem to play a lot of BattleBit. I've been playing a bit of Hunt Showdown. I've kind of got bored of Diablo 4. Has anyone else got bored of Diablo 4? Let us know in the comments. The grind got to me and I just kind of moved on. But BattleBit I'm really enjoying, and these two have both been a pleasure to use for playing this Roblox game Battlefield clone, and I absolutely love it. So the software for both of these is the same. It's Corsair's iCUE. It's a well-known piece of software. If you haven't heard of it, it's just the software that you'll use to configure button mappings and RGB lighting, change the performance. You can save profiles to the onboard memory on both of these and most of Corsair's stuff, to be fair. I've praised it in the past. I really like iCUE, and it's recently gotten better with version 5 and 5 point whatever. You now only have to install the stuff that you need via plugins and modules and stuff like that. So you don't need to install everything, and it does take up a bit less resources than it previously did. It's fairly simple to set up and configure stuff, but it can sometimes be a little bit temperamental with updating firmware on things. So the issues are kind of few and far between, but that's, if you're going to have an issue, me personally, that's where I've noticed it being slow or glitchy or laggy, is when I'm trying to update firmware on connected devices. The customization for both the mouse and the keyboard are similar. You can save profiles to the onboard memory on both the mouse and the keyboard. There are tabs for customizing the lighting, which Corsair are really on the top of the game, in my opinion. They have many different lighting options. You can set up custom lighting options. You can set up different layers to change how often they're shown, and they stack above each other. So you could have a static layer underneath a rainbow layer, and the rainbow layer would appear over the top of the static layer, if that makes sense. I'll show you in some B-roll footage while I'm talking about it. The lighting options from Corsair are very vast, very customizable, and I think they're one of the best in the industry at RGB. And then finally, in the device settings, you've got options for the polling rates that I've mentioned for both of the devices. You can change them, you can reset them, you can put the keyboard into PlayStation mode if you want to use it in PlayStation mode. There's a lot of stuff in there, and you can configure these two to your heart's content and get them set up to suit your play style or your usage style perfectly. So my final thoughts then, I really like both of these peripherals. I think the stabilizers could be better. There's no different way of, there's no other way I can put it. The stabilizers on the keyboard could be better, and I think Corsair need to do a little bit of work on getting their stabs sounding a bit better in their keyboards. But overall, I don't let that detract from the overall experience of using this keyboard. I do like it. It sounds quite nice on the rest of the keys. Small form factor. I appreciate the desk space that I save by using a small form factor keyboard. I like the minimal branding. I like the way it looks. It's not too garish, gamery or tacky. Overall, I just like it, but maybe the stabs could do with a bit more lube. The mouse, if I'm honest, this mouse is now a genuine contender for my daily driver mouse. It may take over from the Death Adder V3 Pro. I really like the shape of it and how it feels. That flat profile really suits my palm grip style when I'm gaming. The weight is the only thing holding me back from just switching straight away. It's a little bit too heavy for my tastes, but not too much. It doesn't feel too hefty. So that 99 grams is probably about my upper limit for a mouse. I'm just too used to using lightweight mice. If you like something a bit more hefty and a bit more weighty than a super ultra lightweight mouse, then this may be one to check out. The battery life on the mouse is great, even though it's not that 100 hours that's advertised, unless you run it without the lighting and on the lowest polling rate, you'll still get a fair amount of time out of one charge of the battery. I like the design of the mouse as well as the keyboard. Just overall, the design that Corsair have gone for, very minimal branding, and the black theme will suit a lot of setups. It'll fit into most setups. It's not very setup specific. If you've got a white PC with black monitor, then these are going to fit. I've kind of got a whitish kind of surround to my PC, black monitors, and then a black case that's now on my desk, as you can see from some of the beer on the video, and I think these look great. So overall, Corsair have done a decent job, I feel. The keyboard's priced quite competitively at 130 quid. The mouse at 150 quid is in direct comparison with some very, very good mice that I've looked at. But overall, I like what Corsair are doing. I think they're heading in the right direction with the keyboard. Just keep going, keep working on those stabs, keep tuning, and eventually we're going to get a real 9 out of 10. I don't like to give a 10 out of 10. We're going to get a 9 out of a 10 keyboard. At the minute, I'm giving this 8 out of 10. The mouse I'm going to give 8.5 out of 10. That's where I'm at with it. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please leave a like down below. That would help me and the channel massively. If you want to check out our merch store, there'll be links to our products just below this video. And if you go into the video's description, you'll find links to our website, our Patreon page, and our Discord server. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest PC gaming news and reviews. Anyway, guys, I've been Matt. These have been the Nightsabre FPS wireless mouse and the K65 Pro 65% keyboard from Corsair. Look after yourselves. I'll speak to you in the next one. See you later.